Alright, so my name's Emily Sanford. I go to Oberlin College and I'm from Texas.
Hi, I'm Juan Contreras. I'm from Chicago. I also go to Oberlin College.
What other projects are you working on?
So we're both RU students here, summer 2017, and we're both looking at bats and their parasites. So my project specifically is looking at the competition between ectoparasites, which are found on the outside of the bats' bodies, which are like mites and ticks and chiggers, and seeing if they're competing with intestinal parasites, which are like tapeworms and other kind of intestinal parasites like that. So I'm trying to see if there are more ectoparasites on the outside, does that make there be fewer intestinal parasites and vice versa?
And I'm working with Sarah Stankovic, who's the LTER coordinator, and I'm also working with parasite stuff, but mainly looking at the different species and seeing if any species are more specific, like any species of parasites are more specific to different species of the bats. I'm also comparing capture methods and bat acoustics to see which are better at surveying the different bat communities inside the cave.
So what's the importance of knowing about the inside versus outside parasites?
It's a good question. So bats are really important to study for disease studies because they are important reservoir hosts. Bats actually have a lot of different viruses in they can host a lot of different viruses. So it's important to see what the parasites are doing on them, because parasites are really good at either causing disease or spreading it amongst different communities. So it's important to know, like, does this parasite that could possibly transport this disease, does it go on just these species of bats or does it affect all of the species of bats? And the more we know about that, the more we can figure out where the disease might spread.
And it becomes more important for humans to study this because just like as habitats are like kind of being altered and people are getting closer and closer to bats, like their exposure to certain diseases is just a lot more important. It's just like they're getting closer to things that they would never have encountered before.
So any findings so far that you can share with us? Any findings? Are you in what stage of the research is yours? Yeah.
So right now we're working on learning R and learning how to code it so we can do the analyses. I guess from a visual observation, a lot of different species of bats are pretty correlated. So if one species of bat will have a high ectoparasite load, they'll like all have high ectoparasite loads, whereas some species are like very clean that you can't find very many on them. So I'm also going to be looking at if different host traits, like a bigger size of a bat will have more or fewer, and those kinds of things. If they're reproductively active, will they have more? And hopefully they'll have the results soon.
I've been moving more into my analysis of the bat acoustics, and originally we started off with over 25,000 files of bat calls. So it was a lot to deal with and a lot to work with. Like my computer kept crashing just loading these files, but luckily I've been able to filter those out and I have the data that I'm going to be working with now. So that's really awesome. And we're working with a program called Kaleidoscope that is able to like project onto a spectrogram the bat calls, and there's also non-bat programs for birds and stuff. So you can actually visually see the different bat calls, like different shapes. So we're going to go in and start looking at those and taking a survey of relative abundance for the different species.
Okay, so how do you capture a bat so you can study it?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different techniques you can use. One's called a harp trap, where basically it's like a metal frame about the size of a truck bed, and then there's like fishing lines that run vertically. And so the bats will kind of fly in there and kind of fall towards the bottom, and there'll be a bag at the bottom, so you can just pull them out of the bag. Our harp trap is kind of broken, so we actually have to just snatch the bats right out of the net. So you have to be pretty quick. Yeah, so that's one of them.
We've also used mist nets, which we kind of set up in different like natural corridors or some like pathways, and they're usually set in a Z form, and the bats get caught in those, and then it's just a matter of detangling them and taking them out.
Okay.
We also went into a few caves and did like manual hand netting, so it's just a really long net. You go up into the top and just scoop them up and take them down.
Okay.
And at most of our sites we put bat recorders as well, just to get a survey of the bat calls as well.
Yeah. Any indication that we as humans, some anthropogenic impacts on life cycle of the bats so far?
That's a good question. You do see a bunch of like broken beer bottles inside the caves, which is a little sad because every time you go in, you're like waking them up and disturbing them. So here it's not so much of a problem because in the tropics the bats don't hibernate, but in more like temperate regions, if you go in and wake them up when they're hibernating, it can cause them to lose energy and causes them to die if you break them up too frequently, which is why the white nose syndrome is causing massive declines in North American populations right now. It's basically this fungus that grows on bats' faces while they're sleeping, and it'll just like eat their skin, so it wakes them up and they're scratching, and then they run out of energy. And I think it's killed 7 million bats so far, so it's kind of a big problem. But here it's not here yet, so that's good.
Okay, so you're trying to relate what happened to local bats to some species in the States, right?
Not for this project because it's only 10 weeks, but maybe in the future.
Okay. Yeah.
How many species of bats have you collected so far?
8 or 9.
There's 13 in Puerto Rico. A few of them are have been captured maybe 6 times, like the eastern red bat, right? And then I think we've only caught 8 or 9.
Yeah, probably 8 or 9. We've gone to different capes to get different types of bats.
Some of them we've only caught like 3 of one species or like 1 of one species.
That's what I was going to say. Do most of them roost in caves, or do you have
There are
some that roost on leaves?
So like most of the bats that we're working with are just working in caves because for us, like in terms of sampling, that's the most like logistically feasible one. But even here, like a lot of the bats will roost in the trees. You can see them at night flying from tree to tree. And then there's a lot of city bats too. So they might roost under bridges or like in abandoned buildings. And I think those we generally see more insectivores because there's more bugs in the city than in like fruit trees and stuff like that.
Yeah. But to catch a high quantity of bats, you need to put the nets right at the cave so we can catch them as they're all emerging or going back into it.
I think if it was a very long study, it'd be really cool to compare the bats in the cities and seeing if their parasite loads are any different than the bats in caves or in trees and like the rainforest and stuff like that. Just to see if being closer to humans maybe affects their lifestyle and stuff like that.
So you see, there's 8 species. How many that you've caught? How many? What percent are insectivores and what are fruit eaters?
It's about even. I think there are probably 5 species that are insectivorous, and the others are either nectar feeders or eat fruit. So.
And there's one species in Puerto Rico, the greater bulldog bat, that actually eats fish. So it's the fishing bat. Like it has very, very long claws on its feet, and it'll like use echolocation to figure out where the fish is in the rivers, and just drag its feet and snatch it up. And we've sampled like 3 or 4 of those. I think we've collected feces from maybe 2 of them, luckily. And just looking at the feces, you can see the fish scales like glittering and stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah. So in terms of their behavior, do they fly? All the species mixed together, or they tend to fly? Some species apart from other species.
Yeah. So it varies like all across the world. Some species will like roost with other species in caves. So the main cave we've been going to is Cave de los Culebrones, which is the cave of the boas, and there's like there are 6 species there that all roost together. But at the other cave that's like just like a couple meters away, there's only 2 species that can be found in that one.
So they fly all together. And what happened when the fruits and the insectivores? I mean, they fly together, or they just fly their own?
Sometimes they do fight in the caves for like space and stuff. Like you might see little bite marks or like holes in their wings that may have been caused from like territory, stuff like that. We do catch like when they swarm, when they come back, we'll have the harp net when they're swarming in like around 4:35 going back into their cave, and we'll catch bats of all different species. So they're flying around together. A lot of the bat species go out of the cave at different times. So when we were sampling really early, like around 7 p.m., we were catching bats that, like the ghost-faced bat, that's an insectivore, and it was mainly that one. But then when we started doing pre-doms, it was a little different.
And are they carrying any parasites right now that could affect you? Like, what precautions are you taking when you handle these bats?
Bat gloves, because sorry, we have like thick gloves on when we catch the bats, just because their parasites are not really as much of an issue. They can be annoying because sometimes they do just fly around your face, because a lot of them are bat flies. But we wear the bat gloves just in case they bite. There's been no recorded case of rabies in bats in Puerto Rico yet, but it's just precautionary because they could be carriers of rabies.
Yeah, I had a thought. Just escaped. Oh yeah, so the bat flies are like very specific, like they evolved just to feed on bats basically, and they just drink their blood. So romantic. But yeah, I think it's important to clarify that even if bats, people are often really scared of bats because like, oh, they have rabies, they have all these diseases, but they serve so many good functions for the ecosystems that we really shouldn't be like exterminating them out of fear. Because the bats will like disperse seeds in the forest, they'll pollinate flowers, and they also eat hundreds of insects every hour. Like even a small little brown bat can eat 1,000 insects in a single hour, or 1,000 mosquitoes. So they're pretty important for our ecosystems.
And you're much more likely to get rabies from like a stray dog or a cat or a mongoose than
Rat,
a bat.
Mhm.
Or a rat, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So they are very good for the ecosystem, and they help us too around, right? We're
Yeah,
eliminating
definitely.
mosquitoes and other insects, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
No
Thank
problem.
you.